Hello and welcome to the final of the Skilling Open, the first event of the new Magnus Carlsen Tour. And the final is between Magnus Carlsen, who else, and Wesley So. The format is that they play for 2 days, 4 rapid games each day, and if it ends up in a draw, like after 8 games, then they go for a tiebreak. So let's dive into the first game of the first day, because it is a super instructive game, especially from Magnus Carlsen's side. So let's get started. So the game starts with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, and with d5 we are actually going to the King's Gambit, some honor to the Netflix show. And after knight c3, there comes c5, so the so-called Terrace variation. And actually Wesley has been playing this during this tournament, and he prepared a special line. So after c takes d5, instead of taking back with the knight, which would be the main line, actually Wesley takes on d4. And after queen d4, he takes the pawn on d5. And e4, this is actually theory, and this actually follows the game of Rajabov and Wesley So from some previous rounds. So here black just takes, the queens are exchanged. After knight g5, black's only move to protect here is bishop e6. That's what Wesley played, and takes. And here comes the, well, not a novelty, but the move that actually differs from the Rajabov game. Magnus Carlsen prepared the move bishop c4. So it's quite clear he just wants to take this pawn. Black's only way to protect this is pretty much king e7, so now the king protects, white castles, and black develops with knight d7. And at this point, for some reason, the world champion started to think, which is actually pretty surprising because when bishop c4 he was clearly prepared up to this point, and king e7 is essentially only move, and after castle knight d7 is the first choice of the computer, so it's pretty surprising that Carlsen was thinking. But he thought for a while and played the move bishop e3. Now comes rook c8, hitting this bishop, has to move, and comes knight c5, hitting this bishop again. And well, here, if white doesn't want to lose more time, he actually has to take on c5. So now the bishop pair is come, but after rook c5 and rook e1, this pawn is clearly going to be taken. And if we make a few more moves, so g6 comes, knight e4, change, and e5. So if we stop here for a moment, we can see that the position is actually opposite colored bishops, but black is pretty much behind development. This e7 king is not too strong, and black also has a weakness on e5. But still opposite colored bishops, so if black manages to exchange the heavy pieces, so that if the rooks comes off the board, it's for sure going to be a draw. So here Carlsen plays the move f4. Now the bishop protects this pawn, and the rook comes, so there's further pressure on e5. And Wesley actually find a very nice way to get his pieces out and also to protect or at least beam back the pawn. So Wesley played the move rook f8. And the idea is that how the game goes, so f takes e5, now comes rook f5, and if white wants to protect this pawn, the only way he can do this is pushing it forward. This is how the game went, and after pushing it forward, this bishop is opened up. The bishop can take on b2. So now again, it's time to actually stop for a second and see what happened here and how to evaluate this ending. So it's very clear that there is obstacle bishops, of course, and there is this e6 pawn, which is very strong at the moment. So what white would like to do is somehow put one rook, let's say rook d1, rook d7, or maybe on the f file someday, rook f7, put some rook on the 7th rank and try to push this e pawn forward, combining with some threats against the black king, and that's the way white goes forward. So what's the way to defend with black? Well, I mentioned before that black needs to exchange the rooks. So black's first plan is to exchange the rooks if possible, and the second thing is that this b3 bishop is essentially the soul of all these pawns, because this is the bishop that protects this e6 pawn. So one way to try to eliminate this bishop is to undermine it with pushing these pawns b5, a5, and a4, eventually hitting this bishop. So yeah, this is basically the evaluation of the position, and yeah, well, actually, if black continues well, he could save this pretty easily. But let's see how the game goes. So now Carlsen plays the move rook d1, very natural, wants to invade on d7. And here actually I invite you to stop the video and try to find the way to immediately neutralize Magnus Carlsen. So here Wesley basically immediately played the move rook c7, which turns out to be, well, I believe basically his only mistake. And well, we'll see how the game will go after this. But a better move would have been to just play rook c1. So I mentioned that exchanging the rooks is really black's favor and then black's preference, so he really wants to exchange the rooks, and rook c1 was an option to eliminate one pair of rooks immediately, and that would have been a lot better. So white needs to takes back, and the problem is if white wants to play rook c4, it seems to be a double attack, hitting this bishop and putting rook c7 check on the board, while black plays bishop e3, and it's black who actually arrives earlier, and it's just checkmate. So rook c7 was a much better move. But Wesley played the move rook c7. And here we can see the technique of the world champion, who is arguably the best endgame player as well, maybe all time. So how to continue? So first, let's make the move g4. Very good move. Make some move to the king. Hits this rook. The rook actually cannot leave the f file. So if you go to rook a5, the rook immediately appears on f4. Rook f7 comes, and actually the game is immediately over. So now g4, so hitting this rook, and actually we are forcing this rook back to passivity. So rook f8 comes. So next move is not so direct. Maybe Carlsen could have been more to the point, but it's also a very logical move. Play the move king g2. So that puts the king, of course, on a light square. The dark squared bishop is no longer able to attack it, and also the rook c1, which was an idea, now it's no more a threat because there is no more pin on the first rank. So after king g2, black, again, I mean, Wesley is a really very good player, very good defender, very pragmatic. He knows immediately what to do here and starts pushing the pawns on the queen side. As mentioned before, b5, a5, a4, that's the plan. So now Carlsen goes with rook e2. The point behind rook e2 is not simply attacking this bishop, of course it's hanging, but also wanting to play rook d2 and then invade on the 7th rank, as mentioned before. So now Wesley is forced to play bishop c3, stopping white from rook d2. But here comes again Carlsen with rook e3, and this rook, actually, this little rook move has just well, it opens up very many plans. So first of all, hits this bishop, and there is a direct plan of just winning a piece. Actually, if you want here, you can stop the video and find this way. So if black makes a mistake, like play a5, what would be the way to continue for white? So the problem is that white hits this bishop, and with rook d7 he can eliminate the defender. So black has to take here, and e takes d7 is a check, and this guy is a check, and this guy is hanging. So white just won a piece in the game. So this is the direct threat of the rook e3, but there is also the point to lift the rook to h3 and to put it to d3 and continue this invasion. So Wesley plays the move bishop b4, and now Carlsen has two options: put it on h3 and attack this h7 pawn, which also looks like a good plan. But Carlsen goes forward with the most natural plan, putting on d3 and then going on to d7. So Wesley continues again very well, plays the move a5. Now Carlsen invades, takes, and king f6, but Carlsen now has a chance to play rook b7. Very tricky move, actually. Here, well, the only way to go on with black is to play the move a4, try to hit this bishop, and once this bishop leaves the diagonal, black can finally take this pawn. But here comes the tricky move again, which is g5 check. Very good move again from Carlsen. So I forgot to mention the time control and the time situation. The time control is 15 minutes and a very generous 10-second increment after each move. That's actually, this 10 seconds is a lot of time. And at this point, actually, they were both quite short on time already. But they both had like quite some minutes left. So it's not like 20 seconds or so, but also not 10 minutes. So here comes g5 check. Well, black's only move is to take this pawn, and now white takes on b5 with a check. And here actually black has multiple options. Well, one way would be, which is a lot safer than what Wesley did, would be just go back with the queen, with the king, and well, now white is going to move the bishop, and also the black bishop can now go back. And well, white still has this e6 pawn, but it doesn't look all that dangerous. Or if you take on b4, then it's going to be a draw actually quite quickly. So rook takes b3, and king e6, and the position is obviously very equal. So, but here actually white has another plan, which is giving rook f4 check. Sorry, so a takes b3, rook f4 check, king e7, and evaluating this pawn ending in a very short time control is actually quite hard, but it turns out to be actually a draw according to the computer, but it's not a surprise that actually Wesley didn't go for this one. So what Wesley did here is played the rook b5 check is rook f5. And the problem is that, well, the problem is that it actually just loses. So rook takes b4 comes, a takes b3, and e7. And now comes rook e5, and here is what Wesley actually blundered. So here I invite you to stop the video again and try to find the way to go on. So the problem is that this rook is the one that defends the promotion square, but white can just play the move rook b5, pinning this pinning on the 5th rank. And actually the problem, I mean, this is not, I mean, this is over, so there's no way further, so you just take e8 queen and the game is over. But the problem for Wesley is that after e7, if he doesn't block, plays rook e5, just plays b takes e2, after e8 queen, a1 queen, he's up a pawn, but the problem is that it's white turn to move, and usually the way you evaluate this position is that it's white who starts and the black king is open, so white is going to give checkmate. And it's not quite easy to foresee why it is checkmate, but these players actually do know that this is going to be checkmate. And the way to checkmate is queen e7 to start with, king h6, rook h4 check, rook h5, and here I invite you again to stop the video and find a way to win. This is actually very forced. There is just one check here, queen f8, queen g7 check, one more check here, g5 is only move, another check here, queen g6 is only move, one more check here, very nice triangling with the queen. After queen g7, white can take the rook, and black cannot take it back because queen g7 is queen up. So yeah, this was the way the game ended, and somewhere I think it's rook h5. So Wesley just throwing the towels. So actually, I think it was a very, very instructive game from Magnus Carlsen. He really used the one and only one mistake that Wesley made, which was not exchanging the rooks as soon as he could, and yeah, it was really a brilliant way that Carlsen managed to beat Wesley. So now actually Wesley is in a bad situation. He really needs to bounce back and beat Magnus Carlsen, which is a thing that, well, the hardest thing obviously in chess. So, but let's see how Wesley is going to fight in the remainder of the games. So see you in some later game.